So I want to start with sort of some context setting remarks, maybe about 12 minutes, to set a framework for looking at the issue of co-creation, maybe from a perspective that we're not accustomed to. So I'll start by saying that we're discovering that the universe is at a crossroads in its evolution right now. After journeying 14 billion years to arrive at the emergence of sentient intelligent life, to reach the next level of its evolution, the universe now requires conscious co-creation. And this is not some sort of a goal, but it's a requirement for this is just the beginning of evolution becoming truly conscious. And as a species and as individuals, we are at precisely the same crossroads as the universe is in its evolution. And it's no coincidence at all that conscious co-creation is required for humanity to be able to persist, to survive through the planetary extinction level event that our scientists are increasingly calling the Anthropocene. It's a catastrophe. It's a planetary cataclysm, and will not survive as a species or even give rise to a successor species unless we are able to establish co-creation. And this has become an evolutionary imperative for us and for the universe and for the spiritual realm as well, which largely remains separated from the physical universe until a species such as our own can become the bridge between the two. So co-creation is the evolutionary threshold for all of the universe. This is evidence, we can see it in the profound absence of co-creation in our civilization today. And maybe the very first person who grasped the evolutionary requirement for co-creation was a Jesuit named Teilhard de Chardin. Quite some time ago, I think he died in the 50s. His work was silenced by the church, but he envisioned this planet, the biosphere of this planet, becoming a conscious collective organism, a co-creative being that he called the noosphere. And the universe, we could say, is now attempting to teach us co-creation by engaging us in its manifestation in the world. This is, we could say, initiated by our elders and our ancestors in the spiritual realm, beings that we could now think of as the angels of evolution, who for a long time have been working towards conscious co-creation with us, sort of pioneering, opening up the pathway of conscious evolution. And for those who are called to participate in this evolutionary quantum leap, these so-called angels of evolution have been preparing a course of learning and becoming for us. And one very unusual and perhaps unique manifestation of this is in the monastery, where we are explicitly learning to embody the process of evolution or emergence and learning to manifest conscious co-creation. And to begin to approach co-creation, which is synonymous, we could say, with conscious evolution, to begin to approach it is to learn and embody the patterns of the evolutionary process itself. This is the fundamental framework of everything that we're doing in the monastery. So we're learning how evolution works, just as permaculturists are learning how life works or how living systems work. In other words, their underlying design. Another way of saying this is that we are learning how God works. But we really can't say that yet because we don't really know what God is. But when we understand how evolution or emergence works or unfolds, we also discover what is lurking behind what we have previously called God. And the first person to crack the code of the evolutionary process of the universe was Arthur M. Young. And Young was an inventor who created the world's first commercial helicopter, the Bell 47. And that's the whirlybird that was featured in the TV series MASH from World War II. But with all of the resources at Bell Labs at his disposal, it took Arthur Young nearly 18 years to accomplish this. You know, he knew that there was a helicopter that was destined to emerge in this world. And he knew that he was destined to usher in its appearance. You know, that was vision. This was vision that he had. But it was an enormous challenge, really an attempt at co-creation. And all through those 18 years of working on the helicopter, he, behind the scenes, was seeking to discover how humans could more effectively create together. That's what was driving him. And his intuition was that the answer could be found in the process by which the universe has evolved, because he thought that process would be embedded or latent in everything. So once that helicopter was successful and off the ground, he devoted the rest of his life to exploring the process of evolution in the universe. And, you know, drawing upon the best scientific understanding of his time, he was looking for patterns of emergence in the evolution of the universe. And he ultimately found them. He broke the code and he published his discoveries in a book called The Reflexive Universe, The Evolution of Consciousness, in 1976. So I feel that Arthur Young is maybe the first human to begin the process of conscious evolution and co-creation. And one of Arthur Young's students, a man named David Sibert, began applying Arthur Young's framework to group process in corporations and organizations. And one of David's most important clients was, in those days, we called it Apple Computer. And that's where I met David in 1986. And I got to study with him for a while, and he just opened the doorway to the evolutionary process that he was learning from Arthur Young, who was still living at that time, spending about half of his time in Berkeley and the other half of his time in London. And David Sibert, by the way, was the creator of the whole discipline of graphic facilitation, you know, where people draw pictures basically of what's happening in meetings. It's group process. He founded something called the Grove, where thousands of people all over the world have been trained in this, what I consider a very subversive transformational process. And so when I learned this, I immediately began to attempt to apply the evolutionary process to the creation of major communication projects for digital technology corporations at that time. And soon I hung out my shingle as a communication architect. And I started teaching workshops on the evolutionary process and showing how it could be applied to many different arenas of learning and discovery. A couple of other individuals involved in this story are Brian Swimme, the mathematical cosmologist, and Thomas Berry, who they were the first to tell the science-based and still very mystical story of the evolution of the universe in their 1992 book, The Universe Story. But unfortunately, they missed their rendezvous with Arthur Young, who died in 1995. And I think them missing each other was really a tremendous tragedy. So someone had to bring those two perspectives together. And a key individual who could have done that was John David Garcia, who died prematurely in 2001. His whole focus was on conscious co-creation, especially in groups of 8 people or in octets. And his great contribution, though, was the discovery of what he called the evolutionary ethic. In other words, the intentional trajectory of the long arc of the moral universe, the evolutionary imperative. But John David Garcia failed to establish the co-creative process on this planet, even in spite of all of his efforts. And another key player in all of this was Barbara Marx Hubbard, who maybe some of you know of. She died here in Colorado last year, and her work was focused specifically on bringing in conscious evolution. And I met Barbara in the early 90s, and we became friends. I introduced her to Arthur Young's work, which she had known nothing about. And I wanted to be Barbara's student, but she told me to just go out there and begin teaching conscious evolution myself. And it took quite a long time before I had the courage to begin doing that. And she wasn't aware of John David Garcia's work either. But Barbara in 1993 published a book, the sort of second subtitle of which was The Book of Co-Creation, very important book. So a key part of the work of the monastery is to bring such separate efforts begun by individuals who were really strangers to each other, to bring them all together and to synthesize them in such a way that they can co-create through us. So how do we learn to consciously embody the evolutionary process so that we can begin to enter the realm of conscious co-creation? Well, it's, as you might guess, it's extremely useful to study the pioneering work of Arthur Young and David Sibert and Brian Swimme and Thomas Berry and Barbara Marx Hubbard and John David Garcia and several others who have made more recent contributions to the work, such as the architect Christopher Alexander. And then with them go all the way back to connect with Teilhard de Chardin, who is the common thread between them all. And once we've done enough of this kind of study, we discover that this process, this mysterious evolutionary process, is teaching us. It's a living process, living in us and through us. And then, once we have progressed a ways on this path of being an evolutionary catalyst, we call it, a vehicle through which evolution itself manifests and becomes aware of itself, we're finally ready to begin learning and practicing the process of co-creation. But then that's a whole new threshold for us. So this co-creation, I would say, is advanced work, but not esoteric. It's that we are actually co-creating co-creation itself, because it hasn't existed yet. And certainly we can just feel the universe yearning for this. And we humans have all yearned for it. And that's most often reflected in our very deep yearning for community, which at heart is really about co-creation. So we are pioneering co-creation here. And this requires extraordinary preparation and intention and a level of yielding that's almost unprecedented in today's world. And beyond that, we are pioneering the community of co-creators. This is Teilhard's vision of the noosphere, the community of co-creators that will be the fulfillment of the dream of the universe. And we have come to call this emergent being the cosmic moral society. Cosmic moral society. Cosmic because, as we are just discovering, we are part of a universe that's replete with intelligent life, and we have a destiny in this greater sphere. Moral because we reflect and embody the morality and spirituality of the evolutionary force itself. And a society because this emerging being ignites the noosphere, the conscious living biosphere, as a contagious center of aliveness and wholeness and coherence in the universe. So we consider this sacred work. And we have shaped this process of learning and becoming into a membership program for the community of emerging evolutionary catalysts. And we call this program the Fellowship. And here we study and learn and practice together. And some of us are also engaged at this next level to anchor the process of conscious co-creation on this planet through what we call the round table. And later we can give you the URL to where to find us, but I'll stop here because I want to open this up for discussion, certainly. And but just wanted to start with that kind of a framework.